And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. And starting with the sea ice, even though we've reached the maximum extent of the sea ice about a week and a half ago, we have seen the ice advance southward as a result of a steady northerly flow of wind across the eastern Bering. And we're going to see a continuation of that, especially along the outer Yukon Delta coast, Nunavik Island, between there and St. Paul as we head up through the end of this week and over the weekend, because a very strong low is going to come up out of the North Pacific and sit down there southeast of the Alaska Peninsula with a very broad circulation over the Gulf, coming in across the southwest mainland and then returning back down across the eastern Aleutians, more of a northeast to northerly flow. So it is still possible for this ice to drift further southward as we close out this week and go into the weekend. So it's going to happen starting in this fashion. We've had another area of low pressure. This is the third in a series of three coming ashore late tonight, early Wednesday morning along the Seward Peninsula with some additional light snow and snow showers. We'll still have some areas of snow continuing for the interior along and north of the Alaska Range up into the higher country above Fairbanks. And as we get into Wednesday, that begins to wind down. That'll push inland and begin to weaken and taper off as we get through the afternoon and evening. But then here's the hints of that low pressure down in the North Pacific. And by Thursday afternoon, we have a 976 low, but it has a very broad circulation. And this occluded front will work its way up into the Gulf, increasing winds and spreading moisture along the Gulf Coast as we get into Friday and Saturday. But the backside, colder air coming down on the backside of this low is going to produce some quite strong winds, gale force and perhaps some storm force gust. You combine that with moderate to heavy snow, there is the potential for blizzard or near blizzard conditions over the eastern Aleutians from around Dutch Harbor on Alaska and then spreading upwards along the YK coastline as we get into Thursday night and Friday. So in the meantime, the Panhandle, pretty quiet weather, mild temperatures have been in the 50s. Wednesday, another one of those days. The inner channels, north winds around 10 knots, waves just a foot or two. For the outer coast, kind of a mixed bag of winds from Sitka down through Craig there. The nearshore waters, northwest winds 10 to 15 knots, and then more easterly winds out of Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling with 4-foot waves. Thursday, winds will be southeast to south for the inner channels, just about 10 knots, waves a foot or two. For the outer coast, look for southeast to south winds outside of the icy strait down through off of Craig there at 10 to 15 knots before turning easterly outside of Yakutat Bay and Cape Suckling. Waves generally running around 3-4 feet there in the nearshore waters of the eastern Gulf Coast. But now for Wednesday across the northwestern Gulf, outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, variable winds 10 knots, waves a few feet. Easterly winds 10 knots within Prince William Sound, a couple of foot waves. And then we're looking at south-southwest winds becoming more westerly as we get down toward Cook Inlet at 20 knots, waves 4 or 5 feet there. But those winds are going to pick up and switch around to the east as the influence of that stronger low and that broader circulation begins to approach the Gulf. And so we expect east winds, Prince William Sound 20 knots, but those east winds increasing to 30 knots, Kayak Island out to outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance, and then lower Cook Inlet, especially there at Kennedy Entrance, off the Kenai coast. We're looking at northeast to easterly gale force winds of 30 to 40 knots with waves building 10 to 12 feet there at the entrance of Cook Inlet. Across the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, pretty benign winds Wednesday. West-southwest winds 15 knots in the vicinity of Kodiak Island. And as we trail out along the Alaska Peninsula, pretty much variable winds only around 10 knots. But then look what happens Thursday. As that low approaches further south, we're going to start to see northeast to winds become northerly as you get out toward the end of the Alaska Peninsula. But northeast to easterly gales 35 knots there within Shelikof Strait, east side of Kodiak Island, waves 10 to 12 feet. Those east winds become northeast and then northerly 35 knot gales there north of Cold Bay with waves building 7 feet. And it'll be even more noticeable here over the eastern Aleutians. Wednesday, You have one more quiet day here around Unalaska. Look at variable winds, 10 to 15 knots. You're going to see the clouds increasing from the east and southeast, but the north winds are going to start to increase Wednesday night. And on Thursday, we're looking at northerly gale force winds around 40 knots with snow. And that snow will increase through the day into Thursday night and Friday and may be heavy at times, creating blizzard or near blizzard conditions over the eastern Aleutians. Further west, winds are not quite as strong, and the precipitation cutoff will be generally just west there of Nikolsky. So it'll be mainly an eastern Aleutian winter storm event there. And for the southwest coast, we have within Bristol Bay 10-knot westerly winds, 15-knot westerly winds within Kuskokwim Bay. And as we get up further along the coast, there's some gustier winds. With that system coming in Wednesday morning up there toward the Bering Strait, that's going to cause west to southwest winds along the lower Yukon coast, especially there, Imanik, and then within Norton Sound, southwest winds up to 30 knots. And then on Thursday, those winds become northerly. So again, the ice could shift further south. We have northerly winds out of Kuskokwim Bay and in the Pribilofs, helping to push that ice southward. Winds not quite as strong, but northeast to northerly, Norton Sound down along the lower Yukon coast at about 15 knots. And then on Wednesday for the Bering Strait, for the south side, southwest to west winds 25 knots. Once you get up north of the Bering Strait, lower Chukchi, look for northeast to north winds right around 20 to 25 knots. And then finally, as we come up across the Arctic coast, southwest winds 10 knots from Utqiagvik to Prudhoe Bay, but coming back to the east around Kaktovik at just 10 knots. And on Thursday, winds across the Beaufort Sea coast, especially east of Utqiagvik, will generally be westerly at 10 knots. And as we come down through the northwestern coast there from Wainwright down to Cape Lisburne, southerly winds 10 knots, but then those winds flip back around north to northwest, lower Chukchi to the Bering Strait, and then finally, as you get south of the Bering Strait on Thursday, winds will be northeast to north, 10 to 15 knots with still ice in place there.